All right, hello and welcome everyone to the Ezoic Publishing team office hours. This is a live Q&A that we do. We've been doing them about once a month and the feedback has been really good. Unfortunately, last week when we tried to do it, we had a lot of issues with the webinar platform and it kept cutting out. And so what we want to do is reschedule. So everyone that signed up for the last one, plus obviously all of you joining us here today will get a copy of this recording when it's done in case you don't see it in its entirety. And so we have a lot of questions that people submitted beforehand, plus we actually gathered all the questions that were in the boxes out of the last webinar, and we're going to start getting into those right now. And then as you guys have questions, we will answer every question that you submit today. So down below, you should be able to see a questions box, or over here in the chat, you can submit questions throughout the event today, and we'll answer them live right here. So anything that you have about using Ezoic or optimizing your site using Ezoic, or anything in general about your publishing business, how to grow your site, SEO, it doesn't matter. It's all game. There's somebody in this room that probably has expertise on the subject that can help you out. So without any further, actually, let's go around the table real quick. I'll introduce you to everybody. This is Charlotte from our UK team. This is Piper, US team lead. Jenny, our UK team lead, and then Mark, who works on our UK publishing team as well. And so we'll be answering your questions today. Most of you guys know me if you've been on past webinars. I'm Tyler Bishop. I'm the head of marketing here at Ezoic. And so this is where we're going to get started. So right into it, guys. The very first question that we have is it's a really good one because it's one that we get quite a bit, which is, when should I turn my percentage of traffic to Ezoic up or down? So obviously an Ezoic user, and they want to know about turning Ezoic up or down. So what do they mean by that, Mark, and do you have a good answer for them?
I think so. Yeah, it's a question we do get quite often from publishers. And to be honest, the answer varies from site to site, but we typically recommend publishers start at sort of 10, 25, or 50%, depending on the size of the site, the amount of traffic they get, and how quickly they want to proceed with testing. It does require a lot of data. The system has to try ad combinations that will perform less well, so it can exclude those to get those high-performing ad combinations to the top. This takes a lot of visits passing through, but it also takes time because there's different trends within days, weeks, months as well, which need to be accounted for. We recommend that publishers start at these percentages because it allows for a good comparison with their original setup. And if Ezoic is set up properly on a site, implemented in line with our best practices, then publishers can turn up exactly as soon as they see that Ezoic is beating their original setup. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add there.
The next question we have is, what can you tell us about the results you're seeing on AMP? And so actually, I'll start off that question if you guys don't mind, because I'm not sure if they're talking about specifically results that we're seeing with publishers using our beta product, which I'll let you talk a little bit about here in a second, Piper, which is an AMP converter. But in general, what we're seeing with AMP, we just did a presentation at SMX London on it. And generally, AMP is sort of a broad solution to a problem that only some people have. And what I mean by that is that AMP is essentially trying to make pages faster. And the reason being is you want a faster mobile web experience a lot of times because you would assume it's better for user experience. Well, the answer to that is sometimes it is. If you have a slow internet connection and you're trying to get information really quickly, and you have an AMP page with AMP ads, then all those things load really quick and it makes a great user experience. If you already have a fast site and somebody is already on a fast connection, it actually does very little to improve user experience. In fact, in many cases, it degrades it, and it's because you lose a lot of functionality sometimes when you convert a page to AMP. That's something that actually our technology has worked on quite a bit. So the results that we're seeing on AMP is generally across the board, it's very difficult to get the pages to earn as much digital revenue on AMP as it is a regular mobile site. And user experience metrics, it depends on site to site. So for example, our restaurant review site may actually benefit from it because those users may be on the go quite a bit and they're trying to get information really quickly, versus a site that may be scientific information or something like that, where it's more likely if somebody's accessing a mobile that they may be connected to Wi-Fi or something like that. So it really depends, but right now there is a struggle in the industry for AMP, and news media publishers are benefiting quite a bit because of the AMP carousel, but regular publishers I think are still trying to figure out if it works or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to add to that, we definitely think it's something that publishers should test, like everything else. And we do have the AMP converter, which is still in beta. So if you are interested in that, it will automatically convert your pages to be amplified. Go ahead and talk to your account manager if you're interested to be put forward for the beta program.
The next question we have is kind of a long one, but I think it's a good question. We get quite a bit. So I'm working to combine the mobile and desktop versions of my site into a single responsive design. Good call. So I'm wondering if the ad tester determines the size of the placeholder's container before inserting an ad to make sure it will fit within the container. In other words, if I allow a 728 by 90 or a 468 by 90 ad in the placeholder, but the media query sets the size of the responsive container to 500 pixels wide, will ad tester automatically fall back to the 468 by 90? So I think what they're trying to figure out is ad tester smart? Will it be able to determine when and where an ad should and shouldn't fit inside of a responsive design?
Yeah, so I'll hop in on that one. So essentially the answer is yes. The system will also have an ad that is suitable for the viewport. And so we leave it to the responsibility of the publisher to set the parameters of the test. So you can do this by going into your ad tester app. And you can see a full list of all the placeholders that are enabled on your site. After each placeholder, you'll find a little pencil. Click on there, then you can find all the sizes to enable and make them as device specific as you want. I do think there's a bit of a point to make about the distinction between responsive ad though and our placeholders. As you'll know, a responsive ad is one that dynamically adjusts for the viewport. But essentially, at the end of the day, the user is still seeing one single ad size. With the Ezoic system, you can enable several different ad sizes. So just to pull up an example, above the folder mobile, you can now set a 300 by 250 size above the fold or below. So that enables 4 different sizes to show. So it means that every visitor that comes to your site, the system will serve them an ad that is more suited to their behavior. So at the end of the day, it means that they have better time on site, and it unlocks this extra revenue potential that you would lose with a responsive ad.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes total sense. Real quick, I'm going to get to one of the questions we have in the chat, just kind of deviate from the list that we had submitted beforehand and the ones we had from last time, because James had a question in the chat. It says, I saw in your newsletter that Google is going to just nuke Google pages and not entire sites. Is this their practice now or in the future? What James I think is referring to is how Google is looking at links as it relates in page and site authority as it relates to SEO. And the answer is this is kind of a changeover whenever they release the kind of the real-time Panda updates. So they've been talking about this for a little bit, and this is their standard practice for now, which is basically Google is looking at a more granular version of your site where they're looking at the pages more so than they are the site. And as it relates to links specifically. So when they're talking about this idea that you might have spammy links coming to your site or something that's black hat nature, they're really looking at how that's affecting individual pages and not your entire site. Although I would be amiss if I said that Google is probably not still taking a site level look in general. So I would just say that for the most part, it's always good to manage and look at your links. I've seen people get in more trouble disavowing links that they don't need to disavow rather than just letting it go. So I would just say use Search Console. We've got a great article on our blog about using Search Console to do exactly this. So that's probably where I would point you. But for the most part, yeah, Google is taking a more individual page look than an entire site look now.
Just to hop in on that one as well. So I know AdSense are currently redeveloping their policy on ad disablement. So if you get a warning about your site because of a violation, they're moving that towards being on a per page rather than an entire site basis. And I believe that's actually live now.
So next question, let's see. Why are the earning experiments, and I'm assuming this person is talking about our layout tester application, not pushed to the top when their metrics also appear better? And I think, Jenny, you'd sent me a screenshot of something that might help with this question.
Yeah, so it is about layout tester, but it's also slightly relevant to the ad tester. So the first thing you want to look at when you're looking at an experiment is the statistical confidence. If you guys can see the screenshot here, some of the bars are green, some of them are orange, some of them are red. The ones that are red, the system does not have enough data to know whether it's a successful experiment or not. We have to wait for more data to be collected. If you're looking at an experiment with green confidence, I think the important thing to remember is each user is going to respond to your site differently. So if you have an experiment that is performing better in terms of EPMB, but being shown fewer times, that's an example of the system working because it knows which users that experiment performs best for.
It makes total sense. So essentially, you may see these things where it's showing a higher EPMB or much improved time on site, but the confidence may be really low, and it may be because it's only on a very specific user base, or it's very few tests have been performed on that layout so far.
Yeah, exactly. Just wait for the system to do its thing, basically. I think that's the benefit of having the AI to do it for you.
Okay. Let's see. Next question that we have on the list is, I now have 90% of my ads running through Ad Tester with Ezoic, and only 5% running through other networks. According to your analytics, my revenue versus old site is up 200% on desktop, 260% on mobile, and 80% on tablet. These are impressive numbers, except that my actual revenue is not on par with those numbers, more like 50% across the board. Why is there a discrepancy here? Piper, this is a question I think you get quite a bit.
Yeah, we get this question quite often. So I just want to make the distinction that this publisher said 95% of my ads, and remember that you're sending 95% of your traffic. So it's your users being sent to Ezoic versions where all the ads are being optimized by the Ezoic system. It's not a percentage of impressions or ad units. So the widget in the dashboard, it's there to give you a general idea of how things are going, but if it's early days, and this is similar to what we just spoke about with the experiments page, we might not have enough data to make statistically confident results or show those results. So what I recommend doing is go ahead and go to the Reporting Earnings tab and take a look at the EPMB broken down by device. This will give you an idea of how the system is performing and also how it's improving day to day. As you know, the early stages of testing, there's a lot of volatility. The system's learning what works best. So you need to give it time. That's probably the most important thing, is giving the system enough time to really learn your users interact with your site. So yeah, my recommendation is look at the EPMB. If you need help calculating your original site's EPMB or prior stats, feel free to get in touch with Ezoic. Anyone here can help you with that. We also have some support articles on understanding earnings per 1,000 visitors, why it's important to look at that metric, and why we use it.
Yeah, so the EPMB metric is really important. So if that's something that you see inside of Ezoic and you don't fully understand why we use that as a metric, it's really for your benefit. And I would go out of my way to learn more about why we use that metric and why it's really good for you to measure your progress overall. Because what we like to say is that it's really your true north. It's to figure out if the things that you're doing on your site together are actually collectively benefiting you or not, right?
Yeah, an easy way to understand it is a lot of publishers and advertisers look at CPM or RPM, but that doesn't tell the whole story. So if you're looking to improve the page views per visit, for example, which is a good thing for any site, we always talk about UX metrics. If you improve the page views per visit, your CPM could technically go down because your users are viewing more ads, but your overall earnings are going up. So it's not really a good metric to determine how the overall site performance is doing. So that's why we use EPMB. It takes into account all those user experience metrics that are super important for site health, and also tells you how you're doing performance-wise.
Excellent. So next question is, I've tried everything from SEO to affiliate links to comments and guest posts on other sites to drive more visitors to my website. It seems though the only way to drive more visitors is to spend money on AdWords or social media campaigns. Am I missing something, or is this the only way? Well, it's definitely not the only way. In fact, I would say that paying and sponsoring stuff is really something that you only want to do as a publisher once you feel like you've really honed in on your audience and your niche, and you want to do it in a testing kind of format, in which once you figure out stuff that is really, really supreme, then you can push that out, and it's a good way to engage your audience. But I would say it's very much secondary to those other things. So I hosted a webinar, I hosted 2 webinars, one on SEO and then one on website marketing. You can go to our YouTube channel, those are available right now. If this is something that's really on your mind and you'd like to learn more about it, I would strongly recommend taking 30 minutes and watching those. It's something that I have a lot of experience with and have found a lot of success with. And so SEO, there's all kinds of misinformation out there, but there's really one thing that you can do that benefits pretty much every site across the board, and it's going back and working on your existing content that already ranks, but just off of page 1. And so we've written some blogs, we've done webinars on basically how to do that properly. And we found that the sites that we've worked with to implement that have seen really great results. And then as it relates to social media and other ways of generating stuff, we did a webinar on that as well about site marketing. And I would say that it's one of the best ways to kind of go, if you want to see just a list of all the different places you could potentially share your content. It's really good because those links plus all those different avenues usually help you generate quite a bit of traffic and can help you with SEO a little bit. So I would say start there. I don't have a time to really dig into it completely, but we really did go into it on those web events. So it's something on your mind, please go check it out. And if you have any other questions, you can send me an email. I'm happy to put you towards those resources. Next question is, will Ezoic ever come out with an app that helps with SEO? Jenny?
So yeah, it's not on our development list right now, but as Tyler's mentioned, we've got a bunch of resources that can help with that. We do find that sites that use the system long term get an increase in organic traffic typically, and we believe this is, again, as Piper was saying about the user experience metrics. So it's one of Google's kind of ranking factors is how well users respond to your site. So if you can consistently improve the user experience metrics, then you're going to be rewarded long term.
Yeah, so that everybody knows that those bounce rate, time on site, page views per visit are ranking factors for Google search and many other search engines. So as sites incrementally improve that by using either ad tester or layout tester or something like that, which is always optimizing for those things, we generally see from the moment someone starts using Ezoic till 5 to 6 months later, you start to see their keywords specifically improve. And tools like SEMrush and Moz and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we have case studies on this, so just email your account manager if you'd like to see some data on it. That's really interesting.
Can we take one of the? Do you mind if I take one of the questions that they?
Yeah. So we can kind of detour off into the chat here. So go ahead.
Yeah, there was just one question that I get asked all the time, and I think it's really important to bring it up. It said, "How much revenue can I earn from 4.5 thousand daily visits?" This is there is no easy way to determine how much a site will make. It's not like every site that gets 100,000 visitors a month makes X amount. It varies site to site. There are so many different factors that go into it. Is your traffic primarily on mobile? Is it on desktop? Desktop usually has a higher EPMV than mobile. I think advertisers spend more on desktop because the intent's higher. I'm not exactly sure why there, but also, where's your traffic coming from? Is it coming from the US? Is it coming from Canada? Is it coming from South America? Also, what is the intent of the user? What's the subject of the content? What are the keywords it's ranking for? What keywords are advertisers bidding on? There are so many different things that go into it that there's no one size fits all for how much a site earns. Instead, like we always go back to, if you plan on using Ezoic, remember we're not an ad network. We are a technology that helps you improve your user experience metrics and also improve your revenue by creating customized ad experiences for each user. So we can help you improve your revenue from where it's currently at. I think the average is about 60% uplift. We have sites that do 200, 300%, just depends. But there's going to be a baseline where your site is at, and we can help improve it that amount. There's no blanket for how much each site will make.
Yeah,
So
it's really impossible. It's like getting the general question of how tall is my child going to be? It's like, well, I have other questions.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good way to start.
Yeah, I think Piper covered a lot of the things that, as a testing company, we can't control on the user side. But there are things that we can help publishers improve, which is the pages per visit, the bounce rate, and the time on site, and all of those will contribute to improving user experience, keeping people on the site more, seeing more ads overall, and as a result, earning more money at the end of the day.
Yeah. So it's one thing that we can do is look at the trend. We can predict how much the site's going to improve by, but yeah, without knowing those other variables.
Yeah. So next question on the list is, why is there extra white space before the ad appearing on my site after the first paragraph? Any idea? Jenny, that's a kind of a specific question. Do you have a good answer?
It's a specific question, but it's one that I personally get it a lot. And there's a couple of answers that could be the case. One of them, sometimes an ad network will bid on a certain size ad, and then they will fill it with a smaller ad. So you'll get, like, you know, a space above or below. Another is that as the webmaster, your visit is probably worth less to a lot of advertisers because you visit the site more. Every time you come back to a site, your visit is worth less. And eventually you're going to start seeing lower quality ads, but then also perhaps no ads. I wouldn't say it's anything to be worried about.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm going to detour into the chat. I'm just kind of bounce back and forth if we get questions. So Stephen has a question. It says, what is your advice about the new ad balance feature? One of you guys want to take that? I'm not quite sure. Ad balance.
Oh, I think he's speaking about ad balance within AdSense.
So we don't really have advice about it per se because we don't we don't optimize with AdSense. But yeah, I would say that it's essentially trying to do what Ezoic does. It's adjusting the different ad positions and sizes based on the user experience. But it's not going to get you the same granularity as using AI to do it. So my recommendation would be, if you want to get a good balance of ads to content, ads in relation to your user experience, then you're best off using our ad tester products.
Yeah, I'm not 100% familiar with how it works, but I think when I was looking into it a little bit, I got this question from one of the publishers that I work with. I think it's setting something within your AdSense and changing it for every user that comes to the site. So this is something we always talk about is maybe for 60% of your users, only showing 3 ads instead of 4 is a better combination. But for 40% of your users, 4 ads would perform better. So in this case, with the ad balance, what they'll do is say, well, 60% of your users prefer 3 ads. Let's show 3 ads to everyone. Whereas what ad tester will do is, if Jenny likes 3 ads, we'll show her 3 ads. If Mark likes 4, we'll show him 4. If Lottie likes 0, she'll get 0. So it's doing it on that granular level so that each user has a customized experience for how they interact with the site.
Yeah, and just kind of to build off of that a little bit, and I don't want to go into too much of a detour, but I was talking to some members of our data science team yesterday, and we were talking about this idea of ad balance. What's really interesting is, this is just a very rudimentary tool inside of AdSense. One of the things that Jenny mentioned earlier, I think is really important, is that our system is really leveraging true machine learning. So it's a real artificial intelligence platform. And one of the things that's interesting about that is we are constantly learning things that only a machine can learn. And we've learned a lot recently about how ads affect other ads, how native ads dilute other ads on a page, how ads at the top maybe don't affect ads at the bottom, but ads that are above the fold maybe affect each other a lot. And so one of the things our system does is, even though you may have a lot of placeholders on your site, or maybe when you visit your site you see a lot of ads, for your users, one of the things we're finding is that our system is actually testing fewer and fewer ads, because we're finding in combination together that they're actually able to generate more revenue from a user session. So all the subsequent pages that they visit, if they actually limit the journey and limit the number of options on a page, because actually then the total CPMs go up across all the ads. This really is interesting and fascinating. It's one of those things that you could only do through machine learning. You could never do it manually. And so it's actually just kind of an interesting kind of takeaway from that. Next question, this is just a quick one. Is there any plan to implement international wire transfer without Payoneer in the future? Lottie, do you have any idea?
I've only heard of a few publishers really ask us this, so it's not something that's very on our priority list. I mean, with things like the SEO app potentially coming out, and who knows where the future could take us. So I think our team is more focused on finding features that will help majority of sites develop and bring you better results. And so I think it's on our list, but it potentially in the future.
Excellent. Next question is, I'm going to bounce back into the chat here. Mark says, my site is still in the early site testing stage with Ezoic 2 months in. I noticed that there were some apps that seemed interesting but were not added. Social icons, mobile friendly, easy links, recommended pages. Should I add these or wait for later in the process? Will this affect the testing setup? So I would say this is a really common question. I'll go to screen share for this, and I'll let you guys kind of all hop in. Because I would say whenever we do these Q&As or whenever we just talk to publishers one-on-one, we get this. I hear this a lot personally, so I'd be interested to hear you guys answer the question.
I can take it. I'll start. So it's important to remember that we offer a couple different products, one of which is the layout tester, which tests all the elements on your site, including menu, logo position, number of columns, the ads within each layout, etc. And then there's the ad tester, which you keep your layout and theme, and the technology will find the ad combinations that drive revenue and improve user experience metrics. You can see that some of these have the basic or enhanced. Enhanced integration is what you need to go through if you want to use the layout tester. And a lot of these apps are built for layout tester. So the recommended pages, for example, if you're using ad tester and you install this app, nothing will happen. It's built for layout tester. So you have to be using layout tester to use it. The other one,
pretty much it says anything that says enhanced, you pretty much have to be using layout tester, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And so then also, I just want to remind everyone, if you do decide to use layout tester or the mobile friendly app, which is essentially layout tester for mobile only, there is a setup process. So you can install the app, go through enhanced integration, decide how much traffic you want to send to the layout tester version of the site. You can test layout tester and ad tester simultaneously. But once you do that, there is a 2 to 3 week period, setup period, where the site goes over to our developers. They make sure everything's working properly in the new layouts. They test them. And then your account manager will let you know when the new layouts are live. So if you do go in and install one of those, just be aware that there is a waiting
setup
period.
process, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can communicate with your account rep on how that works, right?
Yep.
While we're discussing layout tester, I'd just like to pick up on a question from the chat about whether data collected from ad tester will improve the performance of layout tester. And the short answer is no. But if you're running layout tester, ad tester is also an experiment that is included with the layouts. So if you were to go, say, 100% layout tester, and you had ad tester enabled as well, if ad tester was the highest performing layout, that would rank higher. It would rank within the Ezoic layouts as well.
So your existing site leveraging ad tester will be an experiment if you're leveraging layout tester 100%.
Exactly. So I've seen sites who've been on ad tester for, say, 6-7 months, they've been doing really well, performing great, and they've switched to layout tester, and ad tester's still been doing really well on, say, mobile. The Ezoic layouts from layout test performing much better on desktop to start with in the initial period. So
interesting.
Yeah, I think it's something just worth noting, as it's considered an experiment within the system, just like the Ezoic layouts.
Interesting. So if you have started considering layout tester, so most of our users start out with the ad tester just because it's one of the easiest testing applications on the platform. Do you guys recommend people that are just starting out layout tester? When should you start thinking about leveraging layout tester on your site?
From my experience, I would say start with ad tester. It will just open your eyes to how the system works, how machine learning works.
The process of testing. Yeah,
the process of testing. Layout tester is a great option. It performs so well on especially mobile and desktop as well. But it definitely is more of a commitment to the process of testing. It's hard for a lot of publishers, to be honest, to see their site in new layouts.
On desktop specifically.
Yeah.
Mobile, it's a little easier.
Yeah.
There's only so many different ways
Yeah.
content can be organized on mobile.
But I mean, you know, when you've built your site from the ground up and you're so used to seeing it one way and then it changes, it can be kind of hard to adjust. But the performance, especially for user experience, is quite amazing on Layout Tester.
Yeah, and linking into Seth's question about increasing revenue from mobile traffic, obviously ad test is great for that, but
Yeah.
with Layout Tester, the user experience improvements that we typically see mean that long term the revenue increase is amazing.
Yeah, I think one of the keys that what I've been learning from our data science team on mobile is, I wish I could, actually I'm going to try to pull up a graph to show you guys this because I think it's really fascinating. One of the things that we've learned is the impact of, and it's something we talk about quite a bit, it's impact of page views per visit on digital revenue. But what's really fascinating about that is its impact on, so here we go.
Yeah.
So you can see here, this is page views per visit in correlation to revenue. So you can see it's pretty linear. So you see that line. So the more page views, and you can see it goes, what's really fascinating about this is there's no drop off. You can get somebody to visit 46 pages. Every subsequent page view, you make a little bit more off those users. What's really interesting is if you look over here on the side where it says mobile, right here, it says EPMD over here, and then mobile. This first page view is right here. And then if you look at the second page view and then the third page view, the growth is, it more than doubles every time, so it's exponential. So those first 3 page views on mobile are extremely important because the amount of revenue that you can generate from additional page views is more than you could ever generate from any ad, direct ad. I mean, it doesn't matter what type of CPMs you're getting. The most valuable thing that you can do at this point is extend the user session. And this is why the Ezoic AI system is built around user experience. So I would just say, to Jenny's point about Layout Tester is basically trying to figure out what can be manipulated about your entire site to extend those user journeys. What do people like? And I think that that's really important.
Taylor, I think you bring up a really good point. I have so many publishers that come to me and say, what CPM can you give us? And really all they do, I find that publishers spend so much time focusing on which ad networks they're using, what the CPMs are. When looking at that graph we just saw, if you spent time trying to get your users to spend or to visit one more page, you could double or triple the revenue you're making, regardless of which ad network you're using. So it's really, really important to focus on those UX metrics because they correlate directly with how much you're earning from the site.
So I'm going to stay in the chat here. I mean, we certainly have a lot more from the list from last time and the questions before, but I want to make sure that we're getting with some of our live users here. Gord says, could we be hit by Google for too many ads on the pages? What is your perspective on this? So this is actually a really good question because I'm going to address this first as somebody that's been doing SEO for over a decade, worked with thousands and thousands of sites. This is really something that I feel like I have a very close and near and dear spot in my heart to. So whenever this, if you guys read the news media around SEO, there was this big thing, I think it was back in March, where they were talking about like, oh, this big algorithm update and it's related to, could be related to ads on a page. First of all, that was erroneous. The reporters since retracted much of that because there's so much evidence that that's not the case. It could be a small piece of it, but it's more likely that the sites that actually were spammy in nature and had lots of ads on them had multiple webmaster guideline violations and stuff like that. So Google said it is related to that particular update, that anything that had changed was already in the webmaster guidelines. So what you have to realize is Google made 1,800 different updates to the way that search worked last year. So this idea that they do algorithm updates for one specific thing it doesn't operate that way, guys. I mean, they're making changes to the way that paid search works. So right now, almost every week you see different changes in the color, the number, the way that ads are presented at the top of their search. Those ads, when that happens, it affects organic results because it affects things like click-through rate, the way that user behavior shifts inside of search, even when they make changes in AMP. I think one of the things that's really interesting about AMP that we've been learning is that AMP in of itself isn't a ranking factor, and it may not just be the fact that those pages are factors that affect things like rankings. one of the things that's really interesting is it may be affecting search behavior. And I think that that's one of the things that Google takes into account, is it's not just these really simple metrics that we always think of. It's user intent and how query strings play out. So if I search for Abraham Lincoln, right, and then I go to a site and then I keep searching about Abraham Lincoln, my behavior is going to determine for Google whether or not I had a good search experience or not. So which of those sites did I spend the most time on? You know, which one did I stop my search on? That's probably playing a role as well. And so when you start thinking about things this way, this idea that Google would just say, well, X amount of ads, good, bad, I don't think that's the case. One of the things we know personally is being a Google certified partner is that we are always in line with Google policy, communicate with them regularly about this. And the too many ads thing, I think basically the rule of law that we always tell people to stick by is 50-50. Don't go over that line of 50% of the pixels on your page should be content, 50%, no more than 50% should be ads. If you stay by that principle, you're going to be in good shape. Anything to add?
And this ties into Gord's second question as well about load time. In that load time in itself isn't an important factor for impacting advertising revenue. It's the impact that load time has on those user experience metrics. So this is why if you look at our dashboard, there's no metric for load time because it's already baked into the metrics that we optimize for: bounce rate, time on site, page per visit. Because if there's a slow load time, people are going to bounce more, people are going to visit less pages, people are going to spend less time on the site.
And EPMV too, right?
Yeah.
Because if ad latency is affecting the ad viewability or something like that, it could potentially be affecting those other things as well. So the system is always going to be able to optimize. If you have a certain network is showing slow loading ads because they're big bloated types of pixel ads, those ads won't display because it's actually negatively impacting revenue.
And yeah, we do use asynchronous loading or lazy loading on the ads on the system because we have tested it and we found that it's way better for user experience. And just to jump back to the number of ads on a page, so I know we've kind of gone into this a little bit, but the system automatically ensures that your site is compliant with valuable inventory, which is AdSense's new, well, not new, but it's their most recent policy on ad density. So the number of ads on the page is going to be adjusted in relation to the content.
So Robbie has a question in here. I think it might have been something we addressed it a little bit earlier, kind of in depth, but I'll give us a chance to kind of summarize. It says, is it advisable to add and use all the apps in my website? So I'm guessing all the apps in the store. You guys are
Speak to your account manager.
Yeah, speak to your account manager. We said basically the difference between enhanced integration ads and basic ones. I think a lot of the apps in the App Store, if you actually, seems like a lot, like Paradox of Choice, like the cereal aisle at the grocery store, but a lot of those apps are actually built in to give publishers control over very specific things. So you may see there may be an app in there where you can basically select certain URLs that you don't want to show ads on or something like that. That's something for a very small group of publishers, right, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, like, just to add to that, I mean, essentially, as you say, we included these apps to give you the chance to not only include all those features that we said that you love, but also to test new ones as well, to see, okay, maybe I should try social icons on my website. Maybe if I did this for a month and then without for a month, then what would be the difference I see? You know, it's all about, this is the ultimate toolkit, essentially. So it's all about creating those different tests yourself and getting that data to inform your decisions of how to present your site.
Excellent. So Mark has a question here in the chat. Says, do you find larger sites work better, say 2,000 plus pages, rather than lots of smaller sites, say 200 pages, for ad revenue on content article sites? Is there any pattern that shows smaller or larger sites work better for SEO and ad revenue? I'm kind of breaking that one down myself.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure I understand the question. If you're asking, do we find that larger sites compared to smaller sites work better on Ad Tester for Ezoic, I would say it doesn't really matter the size of the site's content. It's more about the traffic that the site gets. Higher traffic sites will perform or will optimize more quickly. It'll still work for smaller sites with lower traffic. But I think he might be asking about SEO in terms of having a lot of content or not. Taylor, do you want to?
Yeah, Mark, if you want to clarify a little bit, I'd be happy to kind of dig into that a little more for questions related in particular to SEO. Yeah, so SEO. Yeah, if you could clarify when you say 2,000 plus pages, okay, so I think I understand what you're saying is lots of pages versus very few pages? Is there a difference? So the difference is really the content on those pages. So I know what Google would say. Google is going to tell you that it makes no difference whatsoever, the 2,200 pages, and that's probably true. And is a blanket statement. The truth is how those pages link together potentially has a really big impact. So what I mean by that is if you have 200 pages and they're really good, high quality content, and you have very decisive keywords that you could go and pull up inside of a tool like SEMrush and then be able to potentially target and say, I'm going to add content to these and improve the SEO of these things, and then link them together to where there's a nice site map of your site where you can extend user session to drive people to other pages. That would be better than having 2,000 pages that are completely disconnected with thin content. If you've been working on a site for years and years and you have 2,000 pages and some of them link together and you've got a nice spider web of how these pages maybe connect with each other, that's probably better than having 200 because you have all these different places for users to go. You have this spread of risk around all the different search queries that you have. So it really depends on a site-by-site basis. A lot of sites generate a lot of their organic traffic from 1 or 2 keywords, and this is good sometimes because you can actually use those keywords to promote other content you have on your site and drive up other rankings. But some people have already got their risk pretty diversified across a lot of different keywords, in which case it's really good to start thinking about how you start parlaying those pieces of content together, and you can drive up the ranking that way. So the answer to your question is it really depends, but I would say it depends on how your pages link together and the quality of the content. Quality of the content is high and your pages link together, it doesn't matter, but that's the key thing in both of those. So.
Can I take one of these questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we just had a question come in. How can I see earnings for each placeholder separately? This goes back to remember that each user is getting a customized ad experience. So a 728 by 90 might work better for one person than a 300 by 250. So we'll show each person what they prefer. So in terms of reporting on individual ad unit performance, it's not going to give you any insight into how the system is performing. And that's because each user is getting a different ad combination.
So it's impossible to report it because everybody's is completely different, right?
Exactly. So that's why we use EPMV and session revenue and compare that to the original. Like we said earlier, there's a ton of support articles on the importance of EPMV. I really recommend that all new publishers read it. I think once you understand the concept of it, it makes a lot of sense. Also, if you link your analytics to your AdSense account, it actually shows you your EPMV. They call it earnings per 1,000 sessions. But it's in there, so if you need help finding it or want us to do a manual calculation, we can help with that as well.
Excellent. So that's a really good way of answering that because I think it's a question we get a lot, and I think people think, well, I want to understand which of those are because people think that there's an end to testing. It's our testing platform, right? But I think one of the things that's important to understand is that the end goal is not to test and understand, right? The end goal of RAI is to test so that it can deliver. So the reason and the mechanism behind testing is so that each user, we can learn more and more about how Piper interacts with the site, how Jenny interacts with the site, how Mark interacts with the site, not to leave Lottie out, how Lottie reacts to the site, and then serve them each completely different experiences, and those may have different values and different things like that, and that constantly changes. So your user behavior and my user behavior changes regularly, and so the system is constantly testing and altering that. And I think one of the goals that a lot of times people have with testing is they want the results and then they just want to go set that on their site. But that really beats the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, which is personalizing every visit for every user that comes. And that's how we extend those journeys. So you guys saw the page views per visit chart earlier. That's essentially where we're trying to build the value inside of our platform. So.
And to add to that, if you think about things, they're constantly changing. So new technologies are coming out. You know, I'm on an iPhone 7 Plus now instead of the iPhone 6, so it's a totally different experience for me online. It's a bigger screen. Also, seasonality plays a big part in it. During the summer, people might engage with content differently than during the fall. There's all these different variables that come into play. So if you're looking for just a one-size-fits-all ad setup that's not going to work long term, and that's not going to work on an individual basis.
Let's see, we've got, Gord had another question, says, is there any way we can call out out poor advertisers, highest bidders, who our audience simply isn't clicking on? Can Ezoic help with this, your additional networks, etc.? What would you advise? So I think what he's saying is that there are advertisers that are showing on his site that are bidding on stuff that the audience isn't clicking on, so contacts, and is asking if Ezoic can help with that. That's actually a good question that we get a lot.
Yeah,
Jenny.
so I think it's important to remember here that there's the CPC metric, cost per click, and also the CPM metric, or cost per 1,000 views. Ezoic, we're not an ad network, but we do provide access to the Google Ad Exchange, which pays on a CPM basis. I wouldn't recommend trying to cull out all advertisers based on the click-through rate, because you're getting paid per view sometimes. The system automatically optimizes and adjusts the ads that are shown based on what your users prefer. It's just a matter of waiting for the data to do
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add to that as well, the mediation feature is also really helpful for that. So not only do we have the ad exchange, but then we also have this extra bidding level on top of that, where you can link in your existing ad partners, and so that they will directly compete with the ad exchange itself. So you still have that competitive demand.
And I think you had mentioned something once before, Jenny, I think about a lot of times people that, if it's your site, you actually see lower quality ads than, and this is in general across every website. If you own a site, you actually see lower quality ads than your visitors, and there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah, so it's just you're worth less to the advertiser because you've been there so many times. They're like, well, this person, they've not got any value to us.
They're not going to click on it.
Yeah,
So the way
because you don't click on your own ads, right, guys?
Yeah. You come to the site to rec, to probably visit 10 times as many pages as a regular viewer.
Spend all day on
so-
the site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so actually what that does is it wears out the auction process, right? So it's that tough conversation we were just having about supply and demand, where the demand, the supply is like not meeting up with the demand, where you're visiting thousands and thousands of pages, thousands and thousands of auctions running all the time, and the bids just get lower and lower, and so that becomes poor quality.
You can see this on any site. If you go to any site and just view as many pages as you can, just keep clicking. After a few minutes, you'll just get those really poor quality advertisements. Just realize that's not what all your users are seeing. They're probably viewing a few pages. It might be their first time to the site, so they're very valuable to the advertisers. But as soon as you go down that route and you've spent, 20 minutes on a site, you're not going to see the best quality ads. That's just how it is.
So Adita asked the same question they asked earlier. So we already kind of answered the question about how you can see earnings for each placeholder. It doesn't work that way. It's on a per user basis, so every user is seeing a completely different experience. So there's no average, and even if there was, you wouldn't want to know, because you would never want to implement that on your site, because what you want is a per user basis experience. But the second question is a good one. It says the revenue fluctuates a lot. In the morning, sometimes it shows 9, then it shows 2, and then later in the night it shows $10 on the same day. I don't know if they're talking about total revenue, if they're talking about their EPB.
But so I'm guessing that this particular user is based in Europe or even further east from that. We report daily at 10 a.m. PST, and any numbers you see before then are not finalized. So that's 10 a.m. PST for the following day. So it doesn't, the reporting doesn't match up with the location of the publisher. It matches up for everyone globally at 10 a.m. PST. So it's possible that the day hasn't finished yet, and you woke up in the morning and you're seeing reporting. So if you check back at 10 a.m. PST the following day, you should see it. You should see a very accurate estimate for the earnings for that day. So,
Yeah. And we're based in the UK, so it's a little bit of a wait for us.
yeah, even we have to wait for it to come up. So I can't imagine what it's like for our Indian publishers.
So Nick has a question. It says, how do you customize the experience for a first-time user? It's somebody that's probably been paying attention to what we've talked about before about user experience and its impact on performance and that sort of thing. So,
yeah, I'd say it's using data that it's collected from other users to your site, and also all the sites on our platform to try and come up with an ad combination that it thinks will work best for them. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. And then for repeat users, it will take that into account when it's optimizing for them.
Yeah, the biggest thing is first-time users. It's not like we start from a completely incompetent standpoint. Our system is smart, and we have some smart starting points based on what we know about other sites. We have thousands and thousands of sites using Ezoic, so we have some nice learnings from them. The additional caveat to that is that if you are sending a good amount of traffic, and this is kind of how testing works, right, guys? You know, the more traffic you have that gets tested, the faster the machine learns. But if you send a decent amount of traffic through to Ezoic, it's not like we learn from Piper or Jenny, and this is a really important distinction, is the amount of times that Piper would have to visit your site before we knew exactly what she liked. She may have to visit your site hundreds of times before we actually have statistically relevant data about her behavior. However, other females from San Diego, California, I won't give too much more demographic information, but visiting on mobile that come from a social network or something like that, there's all these different data points that we look at as it relates to different users, and we look at them in terms of look-alike users. So we start grouping people together based on their behavior and say, people that behave like this, people that come from here and behave like this. So as soon as we start getting traffic, the machine starts learning. So it's not like every first person that visits your site needs to have something individual. We start learning the second people start coming out of the site. Back into the list here, because we're kind of winding down. I don't want to go over an hour, so I'm going to spend about 9 more minutes. But I'm going to keep bouncing into the form here, and if you guys have questions, drop them below or drop them in the chat, and we're happy to keep getting to them. So let's see. My website is translated in multiple languages. Does it improve revenue to use different display ad units per language when working with Ezoic? So I think they mean placeholders inside of Ad Tester. They're all the same placeholders, are they not, Mark?
Yeah, you don't. Language is one of the data points that each placeholder collects and optimizes for. So you don't need to create separate placeholders per language. Having said that, there are settings in each placeholder that can be used to optimize for different languages. So I think there's a screenshot that we've got that shows this. So for example, you have some languages which read left to right, some read right to left. So when you're setting up your placeholders, it can be useful to look at these left and right alignment settings. So you might want to create one placeholder that's aligned left, and then maybe after another paragraph, placeholder that's aligned right, so that if you have publishers who are translating pages, or their natural inclination is to start reading the page from the left or the right, you're giving the system more options to test and optimize, and potentially provide a more effective ad combination setup for these users.
Cool. Screen share again here. So this is one for everyone. I know you guys get this one a lot. This one actually comes back to the question that we were getting about seeing all the earnings from different placeholders, and it's, why do I need to wrap all of my ads? I only want some of my ads optimized. So this is somebody that's obviously using Ad Tester. So for you guys that don't know, when we use Ad Tester, right, we ask that publishers wrap all of their existing ads so that the system can test around those things. And the reason being is all ads dilute other ads and affect other ads on a page. And so wrapping allows our system to account for those, right? So explain that to me.
Oh yeah, so essentially what you do when you wrap these ads is that it just converts them into a placeholder that the system can see. So the ad will appear on both the original version of your site as well as the Ezoic version. So yeah, just going off what you're saying, it means that the system can take an overall holistic look of all the ads on your site. So essentially it can measure more accurately how the dilution effect not only of the ads itself on one page, but across the user session affects your ad revenue and user experience.
So yeah, to add to that, in order for our system to be able to optimize those metrics for you, it needs to be able to track every single ad on every single page throughout the entire user session to see how that ad affects bounce rate, how it affects the performance of the other ads on the page, etc. If you were to only wrap your AdSense ads and then leave other ads unwrapped on the site, what's going to happen is our system is going to try to optimize for those ads it's aware of, the AdSense ones that are wrapped, but it can't track the performance of the other ads on the page. So for example, let's say a user lands on the site, and this is an Ezoic version, so it's a portion of the traffic that you're sending to Ezoic. So our system is trying to optimize the ePMV and the UX metrics. If that user lands on the site and clicks on an ad that isn't wrapped, our system has no idea what happened. It will consider that a bounce. So the next time a user comes to that site, it'll try and move things around to keep the user
basically
on the
get
site.
them to not click on that ad.
Yeah,
right?
and but it's not aware that you actually made revenue from that. So it's basically having a lot of different variables that the system can't track, which will throw off the optimization process. That's why we recommend wrap every single ad on the site. I can't stress this enough how important it is. We have graphs that show the performance of a site, and then as soon as all the ads are wrapped, it just goes way up. So make sure you wrap every single ad on the site. And
Is it fair to say, and this is something that I think is really important to point out, is it fair to say that there's nothing that will further improve revenue and user experience when using Ezoic than making sure all your ads?
Yes.
So if you want to make
100%.
more money using Ezoic, one of the most important things you can do is to wrap all your ads, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Also, it throws off the results from if you're split testing between your original setup and Ezoic, it will throw off the results of your original setup because it will unfairly advantage your original setup. So if you're looking for true data and real accurate test, leaving ads unwrapped will not provide you with that data.
Mhm.
They all need to be included.
And if let's say you're just getting started and you're hesitant to commit a lot of your traffic to Ezoic without seeing any results, that's totally fine. Still set it up the proper way by wrapping all your ads, and then just only send a very small percentage of your traffic through to Ezoic. We'd much rather that you do that than try and game the system and set it up improperly, because it's not going to work and it's going to be a waste of everyone's time at the end of the day.
So this is a question from Kendrick. Says, if someone asks how to advertise on our site, where do we send them? So this is somebody that potentially has a direct advertiser that they're working with. So they have a mechanism to basically apply that inside of Ezoic, right? So maybe Jenny, you handle that?
Yeah, so we have something called the Direct Ad Orders app, which basically functions as a mini ad server, a little bit like DFP. If you sign a contract with somebody to show ads on your site, you can create the direct ad order within the Ezoic system, and it will perform the way that you tell the system to tell it to perform. We've got good support articles on this if you'd like to dig in a bit further, or just email your account manager and we can recommend a way to move forward.
Okay, sounds good. I don't really understand the last question in the chat. Maybe you guys can read through it, and maybe you guys will have some insights.
Yeah, I think I can take this one. So Aditya says, I use Ad Tester and I wrap the natives and banners and placeholders for my entire site. Your optimization system showed native ads above the fold in mobile. Only after that my article could start, and there were no native ads present below the fold. So this is an important point. The system is going to test what you tell it to test. If you put a native ad above the fold on mobile, the system will show that ad. It's on each individual publisher to make sure that they place the placeholders in situations that are going to be appropriate for Google policy. So in this case, Aditya, I just recommend that you move the placeholder or edit the size so that that isn't available to the system.
You can do that using a Chrome extension, or you can also go into the dashboard and do that pretty easily, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
that's another thing I'd recommend is make sure when you're setting up the site, before turning Ezoic on, use the Chrome extension. It's a really useful tool to see what the placeholders look like on, I would look at the top 3 landing pages on your site, see how the placeholders look on desktop, mobile, and tablet. Because you might add a placeholder on desktop and then on mobile it's not where you want it to be. In that scenario, you can turn it off on mobile and create one specifically for mobile. But make sure you're doing a review of the setup before, and I always recommend that you have one of the Ezoic team members do a review of the setup as well, because obviously we have a lot of experience setting up sites, and the setup is crucial to success. If you set up the site properly and give the system time, we have never seen it lose. So.
Excellent. So we're just about out of time. I'm going to try to kind of rant through some of these really quickly because I want to try to get everything answered. Faiz, I'm not quite sure. It says, it's asked this question a couple of times. The truth is we kind of answered this a little bit earlier. You really aren't giving us enough information to be able to give you anything that's accurate or actionable. You're kind of explaining what your current, I'm guessing, daily revenue is. I'm not sure. And then something about AdSense. The truth is every site is different. Yeah,
But to answer that, will the revenue be higher or lower? If you set it up properly and give the system enough time, it's typically 60% higher than your current ad setup or more. But you do have to give the system time. It's not just sort of a swap out ad tags and one day later you're earning more.
Yeah, Ezoic is not an ad network, so it's not competing with any other ad network. In fact, we leverage, you can connect any ad networks you have to Ezoic, so we're making sure that we test all of your different ad networks, right, through mediation. And that brings up one of the questions we actually had left here, which is how long does testing take? And I know that that's probably one of the #1 questions we get when people start using the system, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's completely dependent on the amount of data the system is able to gather. So higher traffic sites usually optimize much faster. I'd say 2 to 3 weeks for a very high traffic site. That also depends how much traffic you're sending through Ezoic though. So if you have a very high traffic site, but you're only sending 5%, then you'll need to budget your time accordingly. If you want a more specific example, I would email your account manager and say, you know, I have 100,000 visitors a month and I'm going to send 50% of my traffic, roughly how long? As Jenny said, the system does need to reach a point of statistical confidence in the results. It takes about 7,000 visits to a single test to be statistically confident in the results. So it does take time. And in the long term, it's worth it. You know, so I understand if people are concerned, maybe they're losing a little bit of money in the beginning in that volatile stage, but it's definitely worth it.
Excellent. So guys, we're just over an hour. I think we're about to turn into a pumpkin. So I'm going to call it there. I know we had probably a couple more questions on our sheet. But if you have additional questions, please reach out to your account representative. I think one of the most important things in this process is Ezoic is a testing platform, which means we're always based on data and education, and data and science always win, right? And so it's one of those things that we want to basically help you leverage our platform to give you better data and to automatically help your site make those better decisions for the users. So if you have questions about that, reach out to your account manager. Anything else you guys have?
No.
All right, thank you guys for joining us today. Our blog is an excellent resource if you want to learn more about testing and about SEO and all these different things. And then obviously our past webinars I think are really, really helpful if you want to further try to figure out how to grow your site and take better advantage of the tools that we have here at Ezoic. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.